take 5 minutes and just visualize yourself at the end. You've got your kids surrounding you, and there's really 2 options of like, Dad, I'm going to miss you, but I'm mad at you because you didn't do enough.
Mm-hmm.
And the other option is they're like, Dad, I'm going to miss you, but don't worry about me. You did an excellent job. And I'm going to carry you with me from here. Go rest. I'll see you in a little while. Like, whoa, which one are you going to choose, man? And how are you going to get there? If you really don't recognize that is coming. It could be tomorrow, because we never know what our timeline's like. It could be in 40 years. It could be 50. That's what we're hoping for. But the goal is the same. How do we become that man, that father, that husband, that example for them to be able to live without us and thrive?
Are you ready to become the dad you were meant to be? Good, because this is the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast, where imperfect actions are better than perfect ideas, promises kept are more important than promises made, and nothing happens unless you make it happen. My name is Drew, father of 3, the founder of the Epic Dad Company. My mission is to help dads up their game and become the husbands, fathers, and men they're called to be. We need epic dads now more than ever. And it is your responsibility and obligation to become the best father you can be and show your kids what is possible. Listen in for weekly tips, strategies, and actions you can take to go from average dad to epic dad. Thanks for listening. Now let's start the episode. What is up, guys? Hey, welcome back to the Epic Dad Legacy Podcast. This is your host, Drew Camp here, the founder of the Epic Dad Company. Hey, if you are new to the program, new to the show, this podcast is meant to do one thing. It is meant to help you level up as a dad and become the husband, father, and man you're called to be. So thank you for being here. Excited for this episode we get to hop into today. Hey, today we have got on Alex WASSOM. Alex is a husband. He is a father to 3 girls and soon to be 1 boy. He is the author of the book Stronger Than Your Pain, and he is a men's performance coach. Alex is focused on helping men maximize their lives by mastering themselves. Utilizing his FYT or FIGHT, which is Forging Your Transformation methodology, Alex aims to create a community of mentally strong and capable individuals who not only develop the strength for you, but expand themselves to have the strength for 2. And during this chat, Alex and I discussed the relationship between the physical body and the mind and the spirit. We talk about how you can shift your behaviors, your words, your actions to support the man that you ultimately want to become. We talk about how finding out that he was having a son has totally shifted his mindset as a dad. And we also talk about how both of us hated running our first marathon. So guys, you are going to love this episode with Alex. I absolutely love the content, the message that Alex is putting out on social media and through his men's coaching group. If you guys aren't following Alex, you absolutely need to. All right, guys. Hey, with that, let's jump into this episode with Alex WASSOM.
And having the girls, you always as a dad, you're like, how do I relate to girls? Right? Because just the innate nature that they come down with, right? That's another thing. I thought that they were going to come down. It's like my job to make them who they are. Boy, was I wrong. Like they come down 75, 80% shaped, and it's a wet ball of clay that I'm kind of molding, but they are who they are. And having the girls, they just immediately went for Barbies and princesses and unicorns and mermaids and sparkles. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing here. So having a boy coming next month, I'm like, this is going to be cool because I can relate a little bit. But I'll tell you, man, my edges, which are very sharp, jagged, and I have a lot of them, have been rounded off due to the daughter love that comes from having girls, man. It's something that that I think I was blessed with. I've heard the saying that if God knows that you need friends for life, he blesses you with daughters. And I'm like, that's true, dude. I don't have a lot of friends, so he gave me daughters, man. There it is. Grateful for that, dude.
Yeah, man. No, girl dad life is the best thing ever, man. We didn't know if ours was going to be a boy or a girl for our first one. And so we went with like a neutral name. So Porter is her name.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. And when she came out, man, I mean, it's just life changed, like right there. It was just like, girl dad, that's what I am, man. and just embraced it. And same thing. I mean, it's, playing with dresses and dolls and Barbies. And I think a lot of like girl dads sometimes are like, it's not a boy. I can't have anything to do with that. Like, I'm not going to do that. But like, no, man, you got to get into it with them, and play house with them and stuff. And it's a blast, man.
Yeah, dude, you got to lean into it. I mean, taking that stoic approach of the obstacle is the way, right? Like, I don't know how to relate to my daughter as a dad. Great. Lean into trying to relate to your daughter as a dad, right? Like, let that be the path. And when you look for it, you find it.
Yeah.
And man, I'll tell you, I got awesome daughters. Like, my second one is, as the classic second one comes down, she's a savage, dude. Absolute savage. My first one, sweetheart. She's the God-given blessing. That's like, ooh, I want more, And then my third one right now, dude, she's just like this perfect little squishy potato that I never want to let go of. Like, I love them. But I'm very excited to see the difference between girls and boys. It's weird.
Yeah.
So my wife comes from a family of 4 girls. I've come from a family of 4 boys. And my wife's sisters, one of them just had her son yesterday. We're due next month. One of her other sisters is due 2 weeks after us. And then the other one just found out that she's pregnant, which I don't know if I should be saying, but nobody knows them. So like, we're going to have 4 new grandbabies in her side of the family just this year.
Yeah.
3 of which we already know are boys. So we went from predominantly girls in this family as we brought the grandchildren in on our side to her side of the family. Then her sisters had boys, so we matched 3 and 3, and now we're quickly shifting to at least a 6-on-3. And it's just the crazy dynamics that come with those kiddos, and
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how that shifts in our life.
Yeah, man. I'd say like having a boy, man, has changed my life 100%. Because I think when you find out that, okay, it's not a girl, it's a boy, there's something that shifts inside of you, I think, to where you ultimately, like, he is going to grow up, right, and look to you as the example, and that forces you to look in the mirror and say, well, am I living the example that I want for him, right? So the past 2 years since having him has been just like an extreme exercise in personal growth and accountability, and just making sure that I'm showing up as the man I want him to become one day. And there's, I feel that every day. There's a ton of imperfections on that. But when I had my girls, I think my sense was I need to protect them, but at the same time, I need to set them up to be released in the wild, right? And then I want to try to be the example of the type of man that they should marry one day. And like that was my lens, right? But there was a lot of things I could hide in that, in a public setting, right, where their eyes are on me. I could try to be that man, but there's a lot of things I was doing kind of behind the scenes that, I didn't want them to see, right? I wasn't living in alignment or in integrity. But then the second I was like, it's a boy, I was like, oh shit, man. I can't hide anything anymore,
Yeah, I gave you fair warning before we started. I may get emotional. That's exactly why, man.
Yeah.
Just a little bit about my background. I wrote my book, Stronger Than Your Pain, published at the beginning of the year. And it kind of tells my story of I grew up this golden child. Everything was going really well. My grandmother passed away when I was 16. And I went into a suicidal depression because of that. And with that, my dad and I became mortal enemies. I mean, and it was my fault predominantly. Like, yes, he could have handled things better, but I blamed him for everything. I as I pulled away and isolated and became this really dark person, I blamed him for everything, who I was, why things happened, and as I have a look at the man that I want to be as the father to my son now. I had this conversation with my wife this morning. I was like, I'm scared. I am scared of becoming what my dad and I had. And I do want to say this. My dad is one of my best friends now, right? But back then, ran away from home, blamed him for everything, was suicidally depressed. And I'm worried that the example that I had within my dad and me in the relationship that we had will be reflected in how I go forward with my son, because that's my example, right? And I love this quote, and I hope it doesn't become my reality, that a man often meets his destiny on the path he takes to avoid it, right? So like, hey, don't be that father, don't be that father, don't be that father, and all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I'm that father. And it's because you're constantly focused on what you're not trying to be, that's where you're giving all your attention. And so I'm already having to visualize now, because like you said, just recognizing like, oh my gosh, I'm having a boy has changed something within me. And I'm already having to do kind of that mental exercise of like, okay, what are the things I need to start critiquing? What example do I want to be for him? And how do I need to shift the way that I handle myself now in order for him to see that, not only for him, but for me as well? Because the thing that I cherish the most in my life is the relationship with my family, including my parents now. And they're wonderful grandparents to my kids. And I want to make sure that I foster that relationship between me and my kids, my spouse, the unit that we are, plus the extended family. And dude, it's terrifying. It's a lot of weight. It is a lot of weight.
It doesn't get easier, man. It won't once they're here either. It's just to give you a fair warning. But I think a lot of that goes back to our relationship with our father, right? And I think what we need to do is be open and honest about like what that relationship was, what was good about it, what wasn't good about it, and how we want to change moving forward. And I think also it's very important for us to not assign blame. Is really big, and that's something that like my pops and I have a great relationship, but there are a lot of things that I want to do differently, right? And that's not like a knock on him, right? It's not assigning blame, because every dad is unless you're a psychopath, right, is like doing the best that he can, and has the right intent. But I think like we have the opportunity, if we do the work, which I want to dive into, because that's kind of what your book is on. If we do the work, is like we can understand that we can make those changes regardless of like what our past relationships were. And it requires a certain amount of deep work that you have to do to forgive, right? Is a big one. And really understand like my limiting beliefs that I have, where do they root from, where do they stem from, and how can I get over those? But there's this awesome visual, I'm sure you've seen it. And it's really simple, but it's all these matches in a row, right? And it's like the match is burned, it's burned, and then like one is down, right? Just a little bit, and then the rest of them are not burned. And so it's like you can be that dad, right? Or, regardless of what your past has looked like. It's like if you're intentional about it, if you make the right decisions and have the right frameworks, then like you can be that generational change. And I think that is what is so awesome about being a dad. Is like you have that opportunity.
Yeah, man, I think that's beautifully said and recognized, right? Like we can be that match that decides to slide down, because it has to be that decision, right? And when I was going through my really dark time, it was because I was pointing the fingers at everybody else and blaming, you made me feel this way, you didn't help me, you put me in this position. And it wasn't until I recognized, as I made the decision, I have to get out of this. What can I start studying? Found a faith, found a philosophy, really dug into the Bushido code with the samurai, stoicism, scriptures, in Christianity, in Buddhism, and all sorts of realms of spirituality, trying to find just direction of like, hey, what did all these great people in life say? And that was really it. It's like, look, the first thing you have to do is recognize that you are responsible for you. It all starts within. It all starts with you. So stop placing blame and look inward. And you mentioned that word forgiveness. And one of the things that I had to realize too was my relationship with my dad that I've been reflecting on a lot. It was important for me to forgive him so that he recognized like, okay, Alex is moving forward. But I think more importantly, it was, and this is how forgiveness works, I think, more important for me to forgive him for me.
100%.
Right? Because I was able to let go of all the pain and anguish and grief that I was holding on to, and just decided, okay, no more. I'm letting this go, so now we can rebuild forward, because my dad was mature enough to do that already. But the
Mm-hmm.
reason it wasn't moving forward is because I wasn't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I quote unquote forgave him, it really allowed me to forgive myself and what I had done and say, hey, I'm ready to move on from here. And he's like, great, I've been waiting for years, you know, like, let's fix this, let's go, you know. So there's a lot to that, but I think those two things are really, really important. When we look at ourselves, it starts from within, you know, and we have to be the ones that make those conscious decisions to say, hey, I'm going to fix me. Everything else, right? Those other matches, I can't control them, but I can fix me, and that will help them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sorry we broke up for a second, but I got you back now. Yeah, man. So tell me kind of what that process looked like, right? Like I think, you know, hey, we find out it's a boy. I think a lot of us haven't done that work in the past, right? Of really looking ourselves in the mirror and trying to fix ourselves so that we can show up as the fathers we want to be. So like you mentioned a lot of things there, right? Like
Yeah,
going about
sorry.
different. No, you're good. I want to dive into each one. So I mean, you talked about like diving into Stoicism, diving into different philosophies, religions. Like, what are some of the broad themes that you pulled away from those, and like how have you applied those?
Yeah, man. I think that the couple of major things I mentioned, it all starts with you, right? We are the ones who are responsible for us. Nobody else is. Nobody can make you do anything, say anything, feel anything. And so if there's something wrong, we have to recognize that we have that power to change. And I think that it's a lot of weight on our shoulders. It can feel like, holy crap, it's all on me. But at the same time, it's liberating because it's like, great, it's on me. Nobody else can do this for me. I can make that decision. And so, I mean, that's found across everything: Christianity, Buddhism, Stoicism, Taoism, right? I mean, it's found everywhere. Like, you are responsible for you. And when I started seeing that pattern arise across these different, you know, religions, philosophies, theologies, it was like, okay, I need to start putting that in practice. And so after years, you know, really a decade of like, hey, what does that mean? Well, you know, how can I continue to better myself? I developed my own methodology to kind of encapsulate all of that. And the way that I look at it, I have what's called the mastery cycle. And picture this circle, and there's different points on it. And this comes from Lao Tzu, ancient Chinese philosopher, who said, you watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. Well, I realized when I was going through those really dark times, my current existing live destiny that I was experiencing was because I had negative thoughts. I had negative words, both internally and externally. I was doing all the wrong actions, which then created bad habits, led to terrible dark character, which ultimately led to where I didn't want to be, which was the destiny I was experiencing. And so I looked at, you know, I created this circle and I said, okay, if I pull the current version of me out, and I put the desired version of me in, what can I control right now to start becoming that desired version of me? So now if I look at that, it's like, hey, I want to be the best dad. What does that mean? And in today's society, social media, you know, we see a bunch of, hey, focus on habits, focus on habits. And I'm not knocking that. We absolutely need to, but we need to recognize that habits are just a continued repetitious pattern of thought, words, and action. So if we want to create a good habit, we first need to grab control of what precedes the habit: thought, word, and action, right? So if I want to change my habit, my character, my destiny, I need to learn to control my thoughts, words, and actions based on the man that I'm striving to become. And that's the other piece of this is I didn't have a purpose, and that purpose, you know, wasn't some magnificent God-sended purpose to me. It was like, hey, I just want to be a better man.
Mm-hmm.
Once I clarify what that man really looks like to me, and I'm working on that now, what does it mean to be a dad with a son? I'm having to redefine my identity a little bit, right? Clarify some of the virtues that I want to have. And you said it perfectly, the example that I set. What are the things that match the integrity that I'm doing in private that I need to tighten up a little bit? What does that look like? So then from there, it's okay, I see that man. How does that man think? What is his thought process like? What is his mindset like? How does he speak both to himself as a dad with a new son, that he has to be graceful with himself as he learns this? But how does he speak to his wife as an example to that son as how he should be a man? How does he speak to his daughters on how to treat other women? How does he speak to him on how to treat other people? Then what are his actions? And you're great at this, of the workout, the self-care, the taking care of you so you can take care of other people. All of that is what I can control moment to moment to moment, which then allows me over time to further develop good habits, a better character, and ultimately reach the big, big destiny, which is, I lay on my deathbed and my son lays his head on my chest and he said, Dad, I love you and you did your job. I can take care of me from here. I'm going to miss you, but I got this.
Yeah, that'd be the way to go right there.
That's it. Like, work backwards from that and then say, okay, what kind of man do I have to create within in order to receive that?
Yeah.
That's what I'm working on, man.
That's a powerful forward-looking vision right there, man. I've never thought about that. That's something I'm gonna spend some time on and think about. Is at the end of my life, right? My kids lay me down. Dude, we're both getting emotional.
Yeah, dude. I'm gonna be chill. I'm gonna be putting myself on mute here for a second. Like,
right.
That's what you work backwards from, man. It's like,
yeah.
Just take a second. Take 5 minutes and just visualize yourself at the end. You've got your kids surrounding you, and there's really 2 options of like, Dad, I'm going to miss you, but I'm mad at you because you didn't do enough.
Mm-hmm.
And the other option is they're like, Dad, I'm going to miss you, but don't worry about me. You did an excellent job. And I'm going to carry you with me from here. Go rest. I'll see you in a little while. Like, whoa, which one are you going to choose, man? And how are you going to get there? If you really don't recognize that is coming. It could be tomorrow because we never know what our timeline's like. It could be in 40 years. It could be 50. That's what we're hoping for. But the goal is the same. How do we become that man, that father, that husband, that example for them to be able to live without us and thrive without us, right? Like,
yeah,
no pressure,
Yeah, well, I think it's yes, there's a significant amount of pressure, right? But I think we have to, and you said the word grace. I think that's very important, right? Is allow ourselves some grace. Because like we're gonna fuck up, right? We are. We're imperfect humans. We're gonna make mistakes, and so to put that vision on a pedestal where we say like I can never mess up, I think is unhealthy. Mm-hmm. So like we have to be willing to give ourselves some grace. But like and I've got some things I want to bring up to you and discuss, but I want to get your perspective on it first. Is like, okay, we have that picture painted for us, right? Of this is who I want to be at the end of the day. Like, how do we get there, right? Like, tactically, if we're just stuck, we've got bad habits, we're not being integrous with our word, we feel like we're in a rut, no momentum. Like, how do we tactically start working towards that man we want to become?
Yeah, man, I think that's a great question, and there are a few tools that I like to use. I think you're a great example of this. I think first and foremost, build your foundation of just who you are physically, because I think starting with the physical mountain within, and I look at it this way, there are 5 mountains: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional. Trust your gut. You got to learn how to listen to that thing. And then ultimately the spiritual, being at peace with who you are, where you are in life, what you're doing. But in order to get there, you got to maintain the physical. So if you're going to have the strength for 2, your family, you got to take care of you, man. Right? And you post this all the time. You're out working out, you're eating well, you're taking care of yourself. And a lot of the time that rut comes from, I'm lost, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm not satisfied with the man that I am. Well, okay, let's start with what's tangible. How's your eating? How's your sleeping? How's your movement? Right? Let's dial those things in before we start talking about meditation and visualization. Like let's make sure that the foundation is strong. And then once that's there, again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but once we started building, then we can start to bridge over into like, okay, let's start visualizing who are you beginning to see yourself becoming as you're recognizing potential, taking care of the physical realm that we're in, right? Because, I mean, this as a man, we start gaining confidence as we do things, right? As we're taking care of our bodies, like, hey, look what I can do. I feel better about me. What else can I do from here? All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think just to interject there too, like,
please.
We're a fitness and supplement company, right? And like so obviously we're all about like, getting out and getting after it. But there's like a much deeper reason behind like why, right? Like, and like we always, we get a bunch of shit from it online, but as everybody does, right? And just like, oh, dad bods are okay. Like you don't need to, be in incredible shape to be a good dad. And, like some part of that is true, right? You can still be a good dad, right? And be in decent shape, right, or be overweight. You can still be a good dad, but you're not going to become the dad that you could be, I think, right? If you're not taking care of your physical body. And the physical body is like the best starting point to, one, be able to build momentum. And then two, like you can actually control the results. It's very tangible, right? And so you're going to build that confidence. And like, that's why we're always like, cool, when you start here, like there's a broad picture, right, of things that we want to do to become a better father. But like, that is the natural starting point. And like, that's why we're so big on it.
I could not agree more, because people are always like, hey, how do I control my thoughts? How do I control my spirit? How do I control my emotions? And I'm like, well, are you controlling the food that you put in your mouth? Are you controlling the actions that you're taking on a daily basis? Are you controlling your sleep patterns, right? Like, these are all very tangible, trackable things that we can grab hold of. Whereas when I tell you how to manage your thoughts and your emotions, it's very intangible. It's hard to grab. It's like wrestling fog, right? So until you understand the concept of what it's like to control the physical being that we are, it's very hard to control the other things. So once you do that, as you just mentioned, it gives you the confidence to be able to recognize what's going on in the other realms of your being. And from there, I think once we tackle the physical mountain, we can start to migrate and traverse into the mental and emotional, which again are very highly intertwined. And I think that this is one of the greatest tools that I have in regards to redefining my identity within and who I'm trying to become, and that is virtue journaling. Have you heard of virtue journaling before?
No.
So I used to hate journaling.
I do. Yeah, and that's why I'm interested, because I'm told all the time by everyone, journal. You should journal. You should journal. And I'm like, well, one, I don't know what the fuck to write. And then two, like, I'll do it. I'll feel stupid, but so I know that's something that's like has been very impactful for so many people. But that's just something I've never been successful at. So I would love to hear about this.
Yeah, man, I'll share my way, right? Not saying it's the way, but this is my way. And I found it very impactful because I hated it too. And it was like, I don't want a Dear Diary, here's what happened today kind of journal, right? Like that's not me. I'm not going to do that. So this is something that I got from my heroic certification. And really what I think it was Sigmund Freud, who said we're, especially as men, comprised of two main components in our lives, and that is work and love. And Brian Johnson, who leads the coaching certification process, he says, hey, we need to add energy to that supplement. Wise working out.
I'm gonna jot down some notes here.
Sure. Because if we don't have our energy maintained, which is where the physical mountain lies, how can we then maximize our being across our work, which is really important for us as men, as providers? How can we also maximize our being across the landscape of love, fathers, partners, and husbands, leaders in our communities, right? So as you look at energy, work, and love, what is your identity within those three? As energy, I strive to be a warrior. Like, I just want to be a savage, man. I want to be fit. I want to be able to go at any moment. I want to be prepared. And so I look at, okay, within energy as my identity, what are the virtues I want to embody? I need to be disciplined. I need to be consistent. I need to be focused. And so I write down every morning, energy, warrior, virtues, and I just write a quick list, 3 to 5 virtues that I want to embody in order to become that inside. And then what are my behaviors going to be that day to then embody those virtues to get me to that identity? My behaviors, I'm going to the gym, I'm tracking my macros, I'm eating I'm drinking my water, I'm being active in the moment, I'm not sitting for more than 90 minutes at a time, those kind of things, right? I'm now tracking backwards from the goal of being a warrior, understanding the virtues it's going to take, and then defining the actions to become that. You do the same thing for work and for love. And now, okay, you can start clearly identifying, because I'm a big believer that if we don't clearly identify, we don't know which behaviors and actions are going to get us there. We may be doing great things, but if it's not going to get us to where we're going, then it's not great things to get us to our desired outcome. So just journaling, and do that takes 3 to 5 minutes every morning, but it helps me to stay on track and visualize, especially when it comes to this father, right? I'm redefining how I discipline and how I teach and how I coach. And I do that by, okay, what virtues do I need to embody? And what are my actions going to be for each kid? Because each one has a different love language, right? So I think tactfully on that moment to moment to moment approach, reworking your identity and who sits at the center of that mastery cycle that I walked us through. This exercise every morning is really, really important. There's something about putting pen to paper that ingrains it in here, brings it to the forefront of our mind. So when things come up, it's like, okay, wait a second. What virtues did I want to embody here? What did I tell myself the behavior was going to be today in order to be this warrior, right? Okay, cool. I'm going to go for that. So it just helps us to, in that moment, be more targeted towards who we're trying to become.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like that method. It's a lot different than, I think just sitting down and spewing our thoughts, which I just don't do well with. But like, and maybe I should, maybe that's a practice I should do, just to, it's like a ping pong freaking match going on in my brain, so like it probably would be good if I would adopt that exercise just to get some stuff out. But I think having a framework, having a structure to it would be a lot more valuable, to me at least. And it reminds me too, like we over the past 2 years of like doing these interviews and things like this, and of me having a son, we put together this framework. It's called the Epic Dad Framework. And it's really to go from like what we're talking about, right? From, I want to be a better dad, right? But how the heck do I get there? And like number one for us is we call it identity and values, which is, it sounds like it's very similar, right? It's like, it's defining who we want to become, right? Like at the end of the day, like who are we? That's the identity piece. And then the values piece is kind of those virtues, right? Is, okay, that's who I am. And then the values is like what's important to me, right? Like how I want to show up. And so we've kind of clarified this, but I like the exercise you have here, of doing that on a daily practice, right? Of like connecting with that, connecting with those values, but how are those values going to show up in those different areas of my life? So it's not just like, I want to be this person. Cool. I'm going to go be it. It's like, okay, I want to do this, but like, how is that going to show up here? How's it going to show up here? How's it going to show up here? So I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, man. I think that, as you know, fitness, nutrition, sleep wise, in order to maximize that part of us, we have to be consistent. And again, I'm a big believer that we may know what we're running from, but if we don't clearly have a target of what we're running towards and a constant reminder of that to keep us on target, then we end up just running and we expend all this energy and we're like, wait, I forgot what I was running towards. And we fall back into who we were. Right. And so if we want to avoid that, in my case, the default setting asshole that I am and that I don't want to be, I need constant reminders of my target and constant reminders of my actions to keep moving forward. So I think the daily practice, utilizing your method, this method, whatever method works for you, just do it, because you need to stay on target so you don't forget what you're working towards and how, more importantly, to continue to move forward. You will slide back if you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's so powerful to have that like solid foundation, right? Of like, this is who I am. Because otherwise you're just taking actions you don't really know why, right? Like just because you feel like it's the right thing to do, But if you have this, it almost acts as a lens and a filter for the decisions you're going to make.
Yeah, man. And, I think for a lot of dads too, I started my men's group coaching fight club. And a lot of the dads that I'm working with are like, well, I want to be in better shape, but I just don't have the motivation to get off the couch, right? And that conversation is still held true there in regards to you need a target. Otherwise, the action of working out, and you don't recognize that you want to be the person that embodies that fit dad perspective, then you're not going to have a reason to get off the couch, because you're going to get up and you're like, well, why? I don't know. Okay, I'm going to sit back down, right? So even if you don't have the motivation, having that clear vision, it's like, okay, well, I know that I'm wasting time doing what it is I'm doing because it's not the proper action to move forward. So I think it works both ways. Like, yes, it keeps you on target, but it also, just to start, man, it's like, it kind of reignites that purpose within once you find that clarity and then you maintain that clarity.
Yeah. And I think it's a great tool to use for motivation, 100%, right? To get you started, right? I think and this is definitely true from my experience, is, you get into this thing, right? You start seeing some progress and like, you reach potential stages of burnout and things like that, right? And so I think, but what's helped me get out of that is a couple things. So one is like reconnecting with this, right? And so, you probably went through some type of practice or exercise to come up with those values and those virtues, right? So kind of like re-going through that, analyzing again, refining, is going to help you. And then what is super helpful for me, and should know if it is for you too, is tying my daily habits to my what we call our identity and our values, or to your virtues, right? And so it's like at the end of the day, it doesn't become like, did I get my workout in?
Right.
Yes, we want to, but like that's not the reason why. Like we're doing the workout because that is who we are per our identity, right? And we're going to be integrous with that identity. It's like the whole like quit smoking thing, right? And I know you know this example, but like if you ask two people that are trying to quit smoking, and or if you offer a cigarette to someone that's trying to quit smoking, and they tell you like, no, sorry, I'm trying to quit, right? I'm trying to quit. Like they're still identifying themselves as a smoker that wants to quit. And they're probably going to like take a puff at some point in time and go right back on the train. But if you offer a cigarette to someone that is quitting and you say, hey, you want a cigarette? They say, no, I'm not a smoker, right? They have self-identified as someone that's not a smoker. And so it's just that shift in mindset, right? So it's the same thing of like your habits. It's like you set your habits up in a way to support your identity, not necessarily to support like the activity you're doing. So that's one is like is those habits, and those habits for me, at least they help me stay on track on a day-to-day basis, because I know I'm going to mess up, right? Like we talked about, you got to give yourself some grace. Like you're gonna miss some stuff, but like my rule is never miss twice, right? Yeah. And so like I may fuck up today, but like I'm right back on tomorrow, and I have those habits, those non-negotiables. So like that keeps me on track. And then the other thing that keeps me on track is a community, accountability, right? It's so much easier to do the things you say you're going to do when you're accountable to somebody else, as opposed to yourself. And so that's been huge for me. Is like whatever the setting is like having those core group of guys that are going to call you out your bullshit, that are going to challenge you, but they're there to support you, on your vision. So I'd love to get your perspective.
Yeah, man. Let me think about where I want to start. I mean, I think when you mentioned the habits really aligning with your identity, I think that is the biggest purpose that we do these things, right? Is because, I'm a big believer in tracking what you do. I have a big extensive tracker that shows like, hey, here's my streaks and the things that I'm good at. And
yeah.
And as I look at that at the end of the month, there's a reward system in place on mine. And I look at everything I have to do, and I break mine down across physical, mental, emotional, spiritual targets that I have. And at the end of the month, I have my rewards. And those rewards for me are to lead by example and to be happy with the man that I am, and then in parentheses, becoming, because we're always striving to be better. It's no physical, tangible, monetary reward or anything that I'm getting. It's because I'm happy with the man that I'm becoming. And I want to actually remove that word happy. I am fulfilled with the man that I am becoming. And so these actions are not to say like, yep, I work out every single day. It's like, no, I embody the warrior ethos that I want to live by. I embody the eternal companion that I want to be for my wife by doing these things, right? The rewards will present themselves. But if I truly want to be satisfied with the man that I am becoming, I need to act accordingly. And so tracking those things and living up to that desired being that we're aiming for via the actions that create those habits truly is the ultimate purpose. I think that's really where we need to go. And you said something too that I strive to teach any and every one of my clients. It's like, look, you have to give 100% all the time. And that doesn't mean that you give 100% of your 100% max capacity every time. You're human. That's not going to happen. Like you said, we're going to fuck up, right? But what it means is that in that moment, on that day, in that time frame, for that workout, whatever it is, you got to give 100% of what you got. And if that 100% today is 70% of what you had yesterday, who cares? Give it. You have to give that, because that is where we become confident in ourselves of, I am always giving everything that I have, right? Whereas if it's like, oh, I'm just not going to go today, I'm too tired. It's like, dude, if you're not going to go to the gym, that's fine. Go for a walk. Just go do some pull-ups. Just go do some push-ups. Give what you have. And the other piece of that is you have to give what you have when you can, because life itself is going to knock you off course. You can probably hear it. I'm experiencing a little bit of the cold. I went to the gym Monday, Tuesday, didn't go Wednesday, Thursday, and I'm lucky that I went all the other days prior, because life has now provided me an opportunity to take a break. And so I have to be on target as often as I can for my own, mental and emotional well-being and how I view myself. But I also have to recognize my kids are going to get sick. My career is going to call me to go travel. I'm going to get sick, and life is going to provide me opportunities to take a break. So you know what? While I can, let's not take a break. Let's freaking go, because I'm not going to hit every day as it is.
Yeah, man. Life will definitely throw you curveballs on the fitness side. It's hilarious you mentioned that. So I just wrapped up a 12-week strength training program, nice. Which I'm usually like a big CrossFitter type, guy. But I took a break from the CrossFit gym, went back into the traditional gym. It was like, cool, man. I'm just going to try to put on 20 pounds over the next 12 weeks. Damn. Yeah. And I didn't quite get 20, but I got like 15, 17 pounds in 12 weeks. And obviously my maxes went way up. I was like super pumped, and then and I was like, cool, I'll start going to the CrossFit gym next week. And that weekend, I had an incident where I fell on a hill sprint, landed on my shoulder, separated my AC joint, tore 2 ligaments in my shoulder, literally
hauling.
It's like the day after, right? I was, about to go on to a mobility type thing. I'm just like, well, shit,
yeah.
All right, cool. Here's, like you said, here's my opportunity that I could just sit back and take a break. But it's no, cool. I'm going to keep pushing, even though I've got this obstacle. So now it's okay, well, I'll go into start doing cardio, or I'll do these other things. I'm not going to stop moving forward, right? Even just because there's an obstacle, it's just got to be a pivot.
Yeah, you got to give what you have, right? And I think, again, using the physical mountain as a start point, when you begin to recognize physically that you're capable of giving more, and you start to get familiar with what your percentages are on a daily basis of what you're able to push yourself through, one, that increases, but two, it allows you to traverse into other realms of your being, of your life, right? Hey, look what I'm doing physically. I'm giving 100%. I'm now finding mentally ways to manage that physical, right? You found a pivot point. You still found a solution to drive you towards maximizing your physical capacity. Well, great. When mental and emotional capacities now arise in the same situation, your mind is shifting into, okay, find a solution. How can I still give what I have? Rather than just being nope, not gonna, right? So starting with that physical, again, it's tangible. You can see it, you can feel it, you can measure it on a daily habit tracker, but it allows you to traverse those other pieces of your being that are typically a little bit more nebulous, but the lessons are applied across them. And the value that comes from taking care of yourself physically and allowing you to get to a place of inner peace spiritually, whatever that means for you, it's all interconnected. You have to maximize your, this physical being if we want to be able to get in touch with those things. And then, you bleed that into being a parent. I mean, what better example do you set for your kids of give 100%, always be solution driven. There's always a way through it, right? We're not going to let the obstacles stop us. We're going up, around, under, through, whatever it's going to be. That example is set by you. And even in these little things, which we think are minute, they're not. They have extreme potency in the perspective of our children. So we have to take advantage of those things.
Yeah. Well, tactical question. What do you use for a tracker? What's the best tool you found?
So, I mean, Google spreadsheets is what I use. Nothing too fancy, but I created one that, shows my percentages on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis, that shows streaks and, hey, what am I doing well on? Because I share this with my clients. I think us as leaders in these spaces, as coaches and mentors, I always share my tracker with them as I ask them to do one if they're ready for that. So it's hey, I want you to see I'm doing all this too, right? And I think that it just needs to be on target. I wouldn't say that I have found oh, this one works better than the other. Each person has it differently. But the point is to make sure that you're viewing what it is, tie it to the ultimate goal. What are you trying to achieve? Break it down into those behaviors that will get you there. And then I think the big thing is make it simple. There's no gray area. Did you do this or not? Right?
Yeah.
Did you do your workout today? It's not, hey, what was your percentage of workouts? Like, nope. Did you do it? Right?
Yeah.
Because if you leave any gray area, it's like, oh, well, I kind of did, so I guess I'll mark it as a yes. Right? It's like, wow, no, that should probably be a no. Right? So those are just the little tidbits that I've seen in my trackers as I've developed them over the years that that have really been efficient. Do you guys have one that you use?
So I've used it like several different things. But I think like the big needle mover for me has been not necessarily a tool, right? But it's been making that visible.
Yeah.
And like kind of going back to the community, right? Like we have like a fitness program inside of our company, and we use like a tracker, and like it's visible, like everybody sees it.
Yep.
Right. And like we have a point system, and so like people know where they stand. They know like, oh shit, like people are going to see what I'm doing. So like we're accountable to each other, which that's been the biggest thing for me personally is like I said, being a part of a community, being accountable to a community, because I've gotten into spots in my life, where I'm not holding myself accountable. I'm not, and regardless of like, how in shape I've been, or like how I feel like my responsibilities as a father are, like I feel like unless there is that community you're tied to and that brotherhood, where there's a little bit of competitiveness, like it just doesn't work for me, so like I'm a really big community guy.
I think that there's a lot of power in that too, man, because I think that going back to the actions need a purpose that it's tied to, even if that purpose is simply to live up to the community that you're involved in. It's beautiful. Like that's enough. I think that we often blow up and expand the word purpose to mean like, oh, I need to find something that's going to change the world. It's like, no, you just need to find something that's going to change your world. You know what I mean? And if that's the community that you're within your gym, great. Find purpose in living up to those standards. So I agree with you, man. And that's why I moved to a group coaching model rather than a one-on-one, especially with men, because I've realized that we have enough on our plates that we do alone that we need to get out and find that sense of community. We're kind of a tribal species. We like the competitive nature, but I think we also like the leadership piece that comes with it. Like, hey, I see you're struggling on your tracker on these specific areas. Maybe I can come in and help because I've noticed within me, this is something that I'm relatively good at. Right.
Yeah.
So maybe I can share some secrets with you. Right. And vice versa. You open yourself up to those kind of teachings from other people as well. So I think there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I want to expand on this concept of purpose as well. And then I want to, that'll be a nice transition segue into, say, hey, we've got our physical, being kind of in line now. Like, how do we transition to emotional, spiritual? But this concept of purpose is something I've struggled with a lot in my life, right? And I think it comes down to the different shift, like a shift between my purpose is what I'm doing versus my purpose is how I'm doing it. And so I think that to me is the big shift because it's not very often that like you're going to get this, vision from God that's like super vivid. That's like, no, Alex, you are going to go do this exact thing, and that's your purpose for being. It's like hardly anybody ever has that. And we feel bad because we don't have that. But I think that is completely normal to be like, well, there's all these things I could be doing. What should I do? Right? What's my purpose? But I think it's less about what you're doing. It's more about how you are doing it. So how are you showing up? How are you impacting others? How are you making other people better in what it is you're doing? So it's really about like the how you're doing.
I would agree with that. Have you heard of the Japanese approach of Ikigai?
Like briefly, I know somewhat of concept. It's like, this is what you're good at. This is what, you can make money at. This is,
like this is what you're good at. This is what you're passionate about. This is what other people need. This is how you make money. You bring them all together, and at the center is your Ikigai. And the closest word that we have in English is purpose.
Okay.
And, a lot of people think like, okay, I need to make a crap ton of money and I need to be extremely good at it. But it's like, look, man, one of these guys was karate, right? If you like you guys are talking about your supplement, you're a fitness company, right? That's tied to your purpose. Your ultimate purpose though is helping dads and people do better in their lives. And to your point, you just found a method of how that works for you based on what you're good at, what you're passionate about, that aligns with that purpose. So I think rather than starting purpose of looking externally of what could I be doing, I think we need to look internally of who am I? Where do my strengths lie? And quite honestly, what has happened to me that I may be able to use to help other people? I think that's where a lot of the purposes is coming from. And then to your point, how can I now maximize my capacity to do that thing, right? Because the ultimate goal in anything that we're doing is to uplift others. I think that is where like the underlying commonality in purpose, whether it's a coach, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a business person, right? My 9-to-5 corporate gig, like then the reason that we're doing what we're doing is to maximize the efficiency of other companies. We tie it to the people, right? We need to, or else it's like, oh, I'm making money. There's no purpose in that.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's fleeting. So I think we need to boil down that purpose first and say, hey, what matters to you internally? If you were to remove money, if you were to remove the influence of everybody else, if you were to solely focus on what would you do if you couldn't fail, what matters to you, where does your heart lie? Start following that purpose, and then you can start tying in the, okay, can I make money off of this? Because then that allows it to become a career, right? Otherwise it's a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can still fulfill your purpose that way. But the big question is, what do other people need in that, right? How can you help other people? And then as you mentioned, it definitely comes down to how you do it, man, because if you're a bit of an a-hole while you're trying to fulfill your purpose, you're not going to help anybody else, which removes your ability to fulfill your purpose. So it comes down to how you're doing that, right? And being able to expand that reach to as many people as you can. Again, even if that's just your community, that's great. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be this grandiose approach to, a heaven sent guidance that's going to transform the world for eternities to come. Nope. Like you said, we don't all get that. I'm still waiting for mine.
So talk to me about the emotional, spiritual side of the house, right? Like I think that ultimately that's what's going to drive the biggest results, right? But I think we have to, like we talked about, we need to focus on the physical being first to get ourselves in the right mindset to where we can then go actually work on ourselves. So talk to me a little bit about that work.
Yeah, man. So I'm a big believer that the physical realm leads to those things. So I'll just, for the sake of this conversation, take that approach, because you can start anywhere, but ultimately you got to come back to the physical to maximize those other realms of our being. But I mean, look, let's take a really hard workout, for example. Yes, it is based in the physical, but what are the thoughts that start coming through your head as you're sweating, you're staving off the nausea, you're pushing past the dude, I want to quit, right? That's the mental and the emotional. I don't want to be doing this anymore. Why did I sign up for this? What makes me think I can do this, right? Okay, now we're starting to play with the mental and the emotional tools, right? Because we start to identify within us who are we striving to become across those mountains. Man, using my marathon, for example, I really want to quit. Am I a quitter? Hell no, I'm not a quitter. Great. Okay. I need to emotionally reset then based on the identity that I have within that emotional realm of my being, and keep pushing physically, but I'm also pushing mentally at this point. Right. I think it's the same thing as we're sitting like, this is too hard, right? There's the emotional piece of this thing. It's like, okay, look at all the other pieces of your life that have been harder than this. And look at all the other things in life that are going to be harder than this. If you can't do this, then we need another way to approach those things. So let's take this as an opportunity to increase your emotional resilience that then will allow you to bring this experience and say, I did this, now I can do this. And that's how all these things are tied. Just living in the physical realm, we can just live there if we're pretty egotistical and we're not recognizing the benefits that come from expanding our physical nature. But if we really tap in and we're present to who we are in the midst of these challenges that we're facing physically, and in the gym, these events that we do, whatever, we start to recognize, man, this is forming who I am. That's why you see Goggins all the time, like running 1,000 miles. You're like, I'm not a quitter. I'm not going to swear like he does, but like, he's talking about that mental capacity as he's on mile 700, right? But it's because that feeds into here. They're all connected. So I think, I'll stop there before we get to the spiritual piece of that. But I think that's how the mental and emotional needs to be approached as we start maximizing the physical, especially at the start point. Like, oh dude, this is too hard. I don't want to keep going. I want to quit. Why am I even doing this? Good question. Answer that. Take time to answer that. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Right? Use that as a trigger point to start clearly identifying who you want to be mentally and emotionally. Are you resilient? Are you gritty? Or are you a quitter in that sense? Keep pushing, man.
Yeah. I want to touch on the marathon. I ran my first one last year. It was brutal, man. It's not fun.
Only, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I was fine on the half. I rounded the half and I was like, yeah, man, I feel good. And then around like 17, 18, I started to get like a little bit tired. And then around like 22, I started cramping. And the last 4 miles, man, were like the worst time of my life to cross the finish line. But those voices, right, were coming up in my head, of like, why are you doing this, man? Like, nobody's gonna care, right? If you quit or whatever, right? But like, and I didn't do it like a group of friends or anything. It was like just me out there. I was like, I'm going to do this myself, And so, those questions definitely come up. So I think there is definitely power to putting yourself into physical situations that are extremely challenging and overcoming them. That's going to build that resilience.
Yeah, man, 100%. I ran my marathon again, probably October of 2022. And so just a little background, I've got Crohn's disease. So the inflammatory stuff in my gut, really, really sensitive. And as I was training, I got to mile 18 right in the training, like, hey, don't run too many more. You'll finish this one. I was like, that's dumb.
Yeah, I don't know why they tell you not to run that. Because like, yeah, you get there and you're fine. And then you get a freaking wall.
Yeah. And more importantly, mentally, I want to be able to tell myself you've done this before, right? So there's the mental aspect of it. But so I kind of had a similar experience. I got my plan was, hey, I ran the St. George, Utah marathon, and it's kind of uphill to start. And then the back half is all downhill. And I was like, great, I'm going to keep, 9.5 minute pace on the uphill. I was right on target. Started going downhill. I was like, sweet, turn the burners on. Let's go. And the downhill caused a lot more inflammation in my gut than I had anticipated. And so like mile 16 came and I was like, oh, I don't like this. And then mile like 18, 19 hit. I was like, ooh, something's happening. I may be going into a flare up. And like 20 to 22, I was like, yep, I'm in a flare up. So I started walking and this angel in a nurse's outfit came out and was like, hey, Alex. She saw my name on my tag and was like, you doing okay? I'm like, no. As soon as I looked up, I was like, if I had anything, I would have vomited it up. And so she pulled me over, put me on oxygen, iced my whole body for an hour. I was like laying on my side. And when I get my flare-ups, I'm like convulsing uncontrollably and it's 75 degrees out. I just ran 20 miles. I've got ice on me. I'm sweating. I'm like, dude, and they tried to put me on a bus like 3 or 4 different times. And this is where that mental and emotional mountain came in. I was like, I'm not a quitter. You are going to have to pull me off a pavement unconscious before I get on that freaking bus. It is not going to happen. And then it bled into more of the spiritual realm of who am I trying to be? What message is this going to send to my kids? How am I going to view myself in 10 years if I don't finish this? It doesn't matter if I walk across the finish line.
Yep.
But how am I spiritually, internally, intuitionally going to view myself if I don't finish what I started? And that is what ended up getting me across the finish line. Like I've sacrificed my family's time. I've sacrificed money. I've sacrificed my own time training for this. I'm not going to quit in here. I'm mentally, emotionally gritty. I'm going to push through. But I also recognize that I am far more capable than just what this meat robot is allowing me to do. So I'm going to tap into that spiritual realm of who I am now and who I want to be looking back and say, no, Alex, you keep going. You keep going. And I think that we have to recognize that this outer shell, and I often look at it this way, like we as the human inside of our vehicle, we're driving the vehicle. As the person, we're the spirit. The vehicle is the body. And so if we maintain the body, we rotate the tires, we change the fluids, right? We maintain the oil, it's going to run just fine. The spirit can drive it and we're going to keep going. But if we don't maintain the body and we change everything on the car to make sure that it's running okay, that body is eventually going to crap out on us and the spirit's going to be sitting there like, dude, I'm trying to drive you forward. Go, 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 right? So we have to maintain that body, but at the same time, we have to maintain the spirit. And that again comes down to how we identify as the man that we're striving to become, and are we living up to that man? Those virtues are really what we need to embody internally. And I had a friend tell me once when I told him, hey man, you need to find a code of ethics that you live up to. You need virtues that you strive to embody. And he said, no, I'm not religious. I don't need virtues. And I was like, hold on a minute. Like, let me tell you something, man. While religion needs virtues, virtues don't need religion, right? So the virtues themselves need to be embodied regardless of your belief. And if you don't, even if you're atheist, the question of, are you going to look back on your life and be satisfied with the life that you live? That's the spiritual question you need to be asking yourself, right? And that comes down to, are you embodying the person that you want to be? That is where purpose really gets ignited. That is where I think peace is found, is as we close the gap between who we are and who we're striving to become. And so using that, physically torturous experience of running that stupid marathon, it allowed me to traverse all of the mountains simultaneously. I had to check myself mentally, check myself emotionally, rely on my intuition of, look at all the other things I've done before. Trust yourself in the process. You can go farther than you think you can. Believe in that. You've done other hard things. Spiritually, Alex, you want to be this kind of man. Push through, because if you don't, you're going to fall short. So keep going. And so that, to me, is how it all is intertwined. And ultimately, we use this physical vehicle that we have to achieve that spiritual goal of, I'm at peace being the man that I'm striving to become. Right?
Yeah. No, well, I think we both had similar experiences on the marathon, but we finished, right? Yes. We finished.
Yeah, got the medal somewhere here.
Yeah, and I think I might be just a little bit psychotic, because I have committed to run a 50 miler this year.
No, I'm gonna hang up. I'm done. Get me out of here. Gee whiz, dude.
So I'm gonna ask you right now, live, will you commit? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, I was like I said, I'm hanging up. Yeah.
No, but no, man. So tell us about the book, where guys can go grab it. It just came out, right?
Yeah, it published in January.
Okay.
So very proud of that. That was a 3-year process from 4 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. 7 days a week, just trying to grind it out. You can find it on Amazon. You can just search Stronger Than Your Pain by Alex WASSOM. It's there. And the book is really my story of my suicidal depression after the death of my grandmother, how it affected me. And each chapter essentially starts with a failure of mine, right? The marathon being one of them, as we get to the importance of the physical mountain. But then the tools that I was taught or figured out along the way to overcome the self-doubt, anxiety, and depression that truthfully still lives within me, man. I still deal with the negative talk that is associated with the trauma that I went through with the passing of my grandmother and my suicidal depression, that being, you're not good enough, people would be better without you, you're a burden. I mean, as a father, I think about that all the time. Like, it'd be easier if I just walked out of the house and never came back. Like, my family would be better off without me. And I know now that that is a lie. That is simply the negative voice that is in my head that is associated with the past trauma, because that's what I experienced during that time. And it still lives within me, but now I have the tools to control it. And so the book kind of encapsulates all of the tools, and not all of them, but a lot of the tools that I still use to this day to become stronger than my pain and overcome self-doubt, anxiety, and depression, to ultimately control the destiny that I want of my kids laying their head on my chest at the end of the day, the end of my life, and saying, Dad, you did a good job. I love you. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna hold that picture, man, for a while. I think that's so powerful to start with that endpoint in mind, right? Of seeing that, like having a vision of that, and then saying, what do I need to do, and who do I need to be, so that turns into a reality. You know?
Yeah, man. Wait, and
yeah,
forgive me, man. You were military, right?
Yes, yeah. So I was active Army for a few years, and then I've been in the National Guard for 7 years.
Awesome.
So still serving. Yeah.
Well, hey, dude, thank you for your service. I got 2 older brothers that were Marines, and they're my heroes in a lot of ways. I tried to join right out of high school, but I'm asthmatic. I got Crohn's. I'm a liability. They're like, dude, get out of here. But I just want to kind of wrap that perspective with, we oftentimes have a clear vision on what we want to do, right? I want to be in the Army, right? You know, you need to go through boot camp. You know, you need to do all these things to become whatever it is in the Army that you want to be. And so you say, okay, I want to be this. Great. I have to swim. I have to run. I have to do push-ups. I have to do pull-ups. I have to be gritty. I have to do all these things. It is no different to visualize, I want to be this kind of man. Great. I have to do all of these things to become that. And so just trying to find a structure and a simple way to visualize that, because a lot of the times, again, we think that it's this ambiguous picture of what does it mean to be a good dad? You need to clarify that. Like, again, that's on you, man. What does it mean for you? Clearly define that, and then work yourself backwards from, okay, what kind of virtues, what kind of actions, what kind of character, what can you do right now to start doing that? And man, I that to me it's the methodology that I teach, man. Start with the end in mind and work towards it, because that's what's going to dictate the importance of your actions and the direction of those actions right now.
Yeah. Well, Alex, man, what's the best place that guys can go find out more about you?
I appreciate that, man. Instagram is where I post all my daily videos. It's just at Alex WASSOM, and then I've got alexwassom.com for a little bit more information on me and my group coaching with Fight Club, and I think the book's on there too. So
awesome, brother. Well, we'll link up everything in the show notes. So guys, definitely go check out Alex. Check out the book. I'm gonna go buy it on Amazon and pick it up, man, and dive into it. I think it'd be very valuable for me to utilize some of those tools just personally. So yeah, man. Well, dude, thank you for coming on, man. I say this at the end of every show is like, guys, if you got value from this episode, which I know you did, like that was an incredible conversation. So it's pretty much a requirement, is drop down, leave us a review, and then also share this with one other dad. Because we talked about community a lot, right, on this, and we try to go through a lot of us try to go through fatherhood and just white knuckle it, try to do everything ourselves, right? But like, you never know like what some other dad is going through, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and so like this episode, you sharing it with them might be what they need to raise their hand and say, I need to get some help, or I need to join a community, or I need to get more involved, and really change the trajectory of their life, and then also their children's life, their children's life. So please share this episode with somebody in your network. And Alex, thank you again, man, for coming on, brother.
Dude, thank you, man. I wouldn't be living up to my identity that I'm striving to live up to if I didn't express my gratitude, man. I'm humbled that you had me on. Thank you for doing that. You've had a lot of awesome podcast episodes, and truly honored that you would have me on. So thank you.
Absolutely, brother. Well, we'll stay connected. And guys, we will see you on the next episode. All right. Thank you so much for listening to the show and supporting our mission to change the culture by creating more epic dads. If this message resonates with you and you're ready to start becoming the husband, father, and man that you are called to be, I'd like to invite you to do two things. The first is to join our free online community called the Epic Dad Crew. Inside the crew, you will get access to resources, workout programs, courses, community, everything you need to start leveling up as a dad. We are not meant to be lone wolves. We are meant to be part of a tribe, surrounded by men that will challenge us and hold us accountable to living as our best selves. So hit the link in the description of this episode and join the Epic Dad Crew today. And if you are ready to accelerate your results and create massive change in your life, I'd like to invite you to join our 90-day Epic Dad Accelerator. Our goal with the accelerator is to help you create an unshakable foundation as a husband and a father, build unstoppable discipline and habits, get into incredible shape with a custom workout and nutrition plan, and provide massive accountability to becoming the type of man you want to become. If you are ready to radically change your life as a father in just 90 days, hit the link in the description of the show to learn more and see if the accelerator is a good fit for you. Thanks for listening. Now go be epic.